Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. The inflation numbers came out. They're supposedly the best in a long time. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We have JP Morgan Chase settling a lawsuit about helping the Jeffrey Epstein situation with taking advantage of the underage girls, which is horrible. And we even have the worst harvest with wheat since 1957. And another country is getting rid of the dollar. Let's go ahead and get started. The Fed, which is the central bank in the United States, decided not to raise rates this week, which sent the stock market and the hopes of what's going to happen in the future absolutely flying. Generally, the stocks in the United States all positive 1, 2, 3%. The Canadian markets was also higher as well. The S&P 500 was at the highest level in 13 months, which is a good thing. And essentially what happens in this situation, there was a conflagration of events, ACT word, where basically the news of the inflation came out, which was supposedly a very good number at 4%. I'm sure when you go to the supermarket or go to a restaurant to eat and you see the sticker tag, the price tag, I'm sure it was just gone up 4%, right? In the past year, 4.9% the last month. And then on top of that, the Fed decided not to raise rates, as I mentioned to you just a moment ago. So what happens? We have a lot of hope of what's going to happen now with the economy because now the Fed decided to pause the rate hikes. If they pause the rate hikes, even though they said that they're most likely going to raise 2 more times in 2023, there's a little bit of hope that they're not going to raise anymore because of what's happening with the economy, and they're collapsing the banking system because now the banking crisis is larger than the one in 2008. So the biggest part of the economy in the United States and most other industrialized countries is consumer spending. Just to give you the idea of the United States, it's 70%. 70. So if they stop raising interest rates and actually start to lower them, that'll get things moving in again in the economy because the consumer can buy things cheaper. They'll probably lower them eventually to 0 again to get the economy moving again after they break more stuff. But that essentially gets 70% of the economy moving again because people can borrow money cheaper, they can buy more things, et cetera, et cetera. The overseas market news, the European markets mostly higher as well. Russia was the biggest winner there. Sorry if you can hear the puppy screaming there in the background. The Latin American markets were also mostly higher. Africa and the Middle East higher as well, with Nigeria taking the crown as the biggest winner there. And then in the far, far east, we have the Nikkei in Japan being the most positive of all the markets out there. And this has to do mainly with the hopes of what's going to happen with the economy because essentially the United States is still the back-to-back World War champs, baby. Largest economy in the world. America. Bitcoin and cryptos. I saw that on it was a t-shirt or a mug or something, back-to-back World War champs. I couldn't help but share it. I saw it, so now you have to hear it. Bitcoin and cryptos, eToro, which is the 15th largest broker in the world with over $10 billion in assets under management, decided to delist the 4 cryptos that were named as securities in the SEC lawsuits against Binance and Coinbase. This is essentially what the government wants. They theoretically can't outright ban Bitcoin, right? But they can force every company to not allow you to use it, right? Because then if there's no companies that are going to allow you to use it, what are you going to do? So eToro delisted those. Remember that Binance is the largest crypto exchange in the world. Coinbase is the largest crypto exchange in the United States. They're going hard. Colombia Central Bank is partnering with Ripple XRP to explore using the blockchain. The Ripple, by the way, the chart pattern looks like it's going to absolutely explode here in a second. So not trading advice, not financial advice, educational purposes only, but maybe I'll follow the prices over the next few weeks if we don't see the pop here next week. Bitcoin gained 2.7% on Friday, just a touch over 26,500. Still relatively low volume and low movement there. In commodities, in the state of Kansas in the United States, the wheat harvest now is going to be the smallest harvest since 1957. The difference, remember, is that in 1957, we had something like 100 million people living in the United States, whereas now we had over 330 million. The Remember, this is happening with all the other fruits as well, right? We talked about the orange shortage, the peach shortage, olive oil shortage because of the olive trees in Spain and Greece. So this is happening everywhere. Corn is also being absolutely devastated by drought. And Volvo released a report saying that the greenhouse gas emissions during the EV production process are 70% higher than building a petrol car. Now, I don't know about you, but if you want to save the environment, I would lean towards a gas guzzler because it's actually safer for the environment. Oil prices rebounded on, ironic, isn't it? Oil prices rebounded Tuesday on the lowest level in nearly 3 months. This has to do with China reporting that they're literally going to throw the absolute bank at the economy, just going to print unlimited amounts of money to get it going again. Remember that China is the second largest economy in the world. In addition to that, the second most populous country in the world. Because of that, oil went up by quite a bit. U.S. crude went up 2.29% to 71.78, while Brent went up over 2.4%, or 2.40, same thing, to 76.71. And precious metals, there's some news about the shortages that we're going to see in silver. For those of you guys that have been following me for a while, silver is my preferred market. Gold went up 0.54% to 1959.20, and silver went down this week to 0.37% to 24.29. Now, a lot of people have been reporting about the nature of the pricing with gold and silver. Remember that we had these lawsuits against futures traders and big banks like Chase, if I'm not mistaken, where it was proved that they were manipulating the prices of these commodities, which I still think is happening. Now, silver, with the shortage that we currently have and we're projected to have, is significantly underpriced with the shortage that we're coming into. Most people don't know that silver is actually the most conductive metal on earth, even better than copper. The reason why they use copper instead of silver is because copper is a lot cheaper than silver. But we have a situation where the demand for silver is skyrocketing due to situations like the EV batteries and also the solar panels. So since silver is the most conductive metal in the world, this is one of the, not the main materials, but a good amount of this material goes into things like the batteries for the EVs, the electric vehicles, in addition to the solar panels that we have on our roofs and power plants and things like that. So silver, the demand set records in every category in 2022. This is retail, this is industrial, everything. And now there's a projected shortfall of 142.1 million ounces, which is going to be the second largest deficit in more than 20 years. Now, production, and remember, this is continuing to grow. How many car makers, for example, are announcing that they're going to go all EV, or they're starting to announce new EV cars, right? And how many new solar panel projects are being announced around the world? So because of this, we already have the second largest deficit in more than 20 years. And we're not going to be able to keep up with the demand because that's going to continue to skyrocket because of the demand for EVs and also solar panels. But the production can't keep up with demand due to the fact that it takes 10 years to start a new mine. So where do you think the prices of silver are going to go? Financial and banking news. The banking crisis, as I mentioned in the beginning, is officially bigger than 2008. So more records for the U.S. According to the Federal Reserve Bank office in New York, U.S. consumers are now owing almost $1 trillion on credit cards, up 17% from a year earlier, or an average of about $5,700 per person. And this situation is due to the fact that since everybody's dying from the inflation, a lot more people are using the credit cards to survive. UBS, which is the huge bank out of Switzerland, closed its deal to buy the Credit Suisse, which was the bank that collapsed in Switzerland, for $3.25 billion. And JP Morgan Chase has agreed to settle for $290 million for sexual abuse victims of Jeffrey Epstein. It's one of two lawsuits, and supposedly they ignored the warnings about its long-term client and facilitated his alleged sex trafficking. Just for the record, Kanye West got debanked, even by Chase, not Jeffrey Epstein. That should tell you everything. Political news, George Soros, the billionaire trader, is going to transfer his $25 billion empire to his 92 younger son. His younger son, Alexander Soros, he's 92 years old, meaning George Soros, and he's one of the ones that's supporting a lot of these district attorneys in cities around the country in the United States that want to let go the prisoners once they get caught even stealing and all these kinds of things. In economic news, 20 new countries are applying for the BRICS alliance. The BRICS, remember, is a group of countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They're planning on launching a new reserve currency. And so now everybody's starting to make a bunch of agreements directly with them because they want to be able to trade directly rather than using the US dollar. Egypt is an important country in Africa, economy-wise. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they're the second or third largest economy in Africa, and they're deciding to settle their trade with China, Russia, and India in the local currencies by ditching the US dollar. Now, if you don't know kind of the big paradigm of this, the majority of the US dollars that have been emitted in history are outside of the US. So the more and more countries that decide to ditch the dollar, the demand for the dollar is going to collapse, and a lot of those dollars are going to come back home, which is going to cause a hyperinflationary environment, much like Argentina or Zimbabwe or Venezuela. Interest on the U.S. debt is going to become the fourth largest expense in the U.S. government, ahead of defense. Remember, the United States spends more than the next 20 or 30 countries combined on defense. The interest on the debt went up 25% compared to the previous year, which was a quarter of the deficit this month. And to add insult to injury, remember that the agreement for the debt limit in the United States, they decided to remove the debt limit completely for the next 2 years. So now they can just print whatever amount of money that they want, and we just got to suffer the consequences later, essentially. Corporate news, Toyota went up over 4% on Wednesday. Their shares soared to a 16-month high after they announced a full lineup of new electric vehicles. You see what I mean about silver? In addition to that, they talked about new battery development that they're going to start producing in 2025 that can give cars a range of up to 900 miles. Their shares are up over 21% in 2023. And shares of iRobot went up over 20% after the UK regulator approved Amazon's $1.7 billion purchase for the Roomba vacuum cleaner maker. Remember Roomba, it's those little circular machines that kind of hover on the floor. They roll around and they clean they basically clean your floors. And remember that Roomba was the same robot that took pictures without the authority of somebody when they were on the toilet and then shared them on Facebook. Same company. Amazing. Technology. Trade news, President Putin is saying that he's likely to withdraw from the Black Sea grain deal, allowing Ukraine to export food. He is accusing Putin that Russia doesn't have, or they have a lot of obstacles to export their own food. So he's saying, well, if you're not going to let us export our own food, then we're not going to let you export food from Ukraine. In technology, Virgin Galactic is announcing the beginning of commercial operations in as soon as June 27th. The first crew is going to be 3 crew members from the Italian Air Force, and they're going to do all kind of gravity research on specific payloads up there. Soon, you'll be able to buy a ticket, I think, for $100,000 or $200,000 to go up into space. In investment news, a poll of 976 business leaders from ResumeBuilder.com, a survey that was done, over half of U.S. employers are now offering or plan to offer a 4-day work week. Ready for a 3-day weekend. And international events, Belarus, the country, which is between Europe and Russia, kind of snugged right in between there. The president of Belarus, Lukashenko, said that on Tuesday he's going to start delivering the nuclear weapons from Russia that are 3 times more powerful than the atomic bombs that the U.S. dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan in 1945. So definitely de-escalating the war. Great job by this administration. And according to a report by the investment migration consultancy firm Henley & Partners, China, with being the second largest economy in the world with the second largest population, is again going to see the exodus of the most millionaires this year. A net 10,800 high net worth individuals are migrated out of China, and India is set to lose over 6,500 millionaires as well. The biggest winner or acceptance of millionaires is going to be the new Communist Republic of Australia. Remember, they put people in concentration camps during the pandemic. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.